Ladies, did you know that your daily sugar habit could be cutting your chances of conceiving by 20%? That's a lot. From PMS to egg health, sugar is silently, secretly sabotage your fertility and your reproductive health. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly what's going on and even giving you some tips about some good, safe alternatives and some of those sugar substitutes that you actually should be avoiding. Hello, love. Welcome back. And if you are new here, I am Erica, your fertility nutritionist with a rainbow baby of her very own. Here, as always, to give you the tips and support whether you are trying for your first baby or struggling to have the next one. Okay, so maybe you're thinking, like, I knew sugar wasn't good for me, but I didn't know that it was having such a huge impact on my fertility. Fortunately, that is the case. Researchers actually found that women who had a high, consistent intake of even just sugary drinks on a regular basis had a 20% decrease in their chances of conceiving and then going on to deliver a baby. So 20% is a huge cut in something that is already kind of difficult to achieve. The healthiest 25-year-old only has a 25% chance of getting pregnant already. So to add on to that and to cut into that percentage, sugar is doing a big number on your fertility. So sugar is a highly processed, highly refined carbohydrate, and the way that it is processed, it is allowed to easily be added to so many of our processed and packaged goods because sugar, salt, and fat make things taste better. So it's kind of a shoe-in when companies are trying to figure out how to make a better recipe and to make something that we will consume over and over again. There is a definite increase in the amount of sugar that has been added to our diet. In fact, it has doubled in recent decades. And there's also an increase in the rates of low fertility. So both are kind of happening at the same time. There definitely is a correlation between the two, and research is even showing that there's a causation between sugar and low fertility. What's going on with fertility and reproductive health and menstrual health? So sugar is very inflammatory, and high sugar intake affects things like PMS, menstrual pain, as well as being related to things like PCOS and other ovulatory conditions. It of course affects hormone balance. It even affects the number of eggs that are able to mature, and it affects the quality of those eggs when women are ovulating. So you can see the ripple effect that it's having in someone like yourself who may be trying to get pregnant or who is struggling to stay pregnant. Sugar can affect women even in subtle ways that are outside of the fertility spectrum. It can give you brain fog and affect your concentration. It can go on to affect things like joint pain because inflammation affects our body in so many ways. So if you are someone who is struggling with lots of PMS and lots of painful menstrual cramps, sugar may be the culprit, especially if you are consuming a lot of sugar around the time that your cycle is supposed to be starting. Sugar causes an increase in a compound called prostaglandins, and prostaglandins basically affect the way the uterus contracts. So more prostaglandins, more uterus contractions during your menstrual bleed, and it causes more pain for certain women. I can definitely attest to that. When I did a sugar detox and I cleansed myself from sugar, and I took a really long and hard look at my relationship to sugar and how much sugar I was taking in, I noticed an immediate change on the very next cycle, and from every cycle after that, that my menstrual cramp pain went way down. Let's talk about what's going on a hormonal level. You may have heard the term insulin, and you may have heard the term insulin resistance. So with insulin resistance, this is basically saying that your body doesn't respond to insulin the way that it used to in the world, and the function of insulin is no longer the same. So sugar is really broken down into something called glucose, which you may also have heard of. And glucose is just one type of sugar. There's also fructose and sucrose. There's all types of sugar, but we'll just focus on glucose right now. And glucose is the main form of energy that your cell in your body likes to use. It is the main currency that your cells like to exchange. However, the only way that glucose can enter your cells to be used by the cells and do all the functions and the jobs that the cells need to do to keep you functioning and thriving and surviving, the only way that glucose can get in is by being chaperoned in, ushered in by insulin. So when someone has insulin resistance, what is happening is that the glucose is there, you're eating the foods and it's being broken down, but the insulin is no longer able to do its job properly to chaperone the glucose in. And what do you think is going on when something needs a chaperone and doesn't have a chaperone? That thing is probably running amok, causing problems everywhere. That's what's going on with glucose. When it is not able to get into the cells, it is just running free in your bloodstream, and it is washing and bathing all of your cells in your tissue because it has nowhere else to go. And with all of that, it's causing damage and irritation. It's having a negative effect, and it's impacting your health and the function of other tissues, because glucose is not meant to just live in the bloodstream like that. So you may have also heard of another term called oxidative stress. That's the thing that we're so focused on antioxidants for. So we're taking antioxidants and we're eating our acai berries and our pomegranates, like all these things. We're eating all these antioxidants to combat oxidative stress, oxidative damage. None of these things are supportive for your healthy function of your body in general, but certainly not your reproductive health. Your reproductive health and your reproductive system is a fragile thing that needs to be coddled and taken care of. It shouldn't be aggravated and irritated by all of these outside factors. So when there is insulin resistance and it is causing glucose to build up, one of the things that is affected is the ovaries. The ovaries is a tissue and it's made of lots of cells, and your eggs are actually cells. They happen to be the largest cell in your body, but they are cells. And so when glucose is out there doing its thing and causing damage because of insulin resistance, your fertility and your reproductive health definitely is affected. Okay, so it's not all bad, right? I'm not saying that you should never have sugar. I'm not saying sugar will be the death of us all. I'm not saying that any pregnant person must have never had sugar. No, that's definitely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that sugar is actually an anti-nutrient. It itself, the way that it's processed, the way that it is used in our standard American diet, sugar itself is an anti-nutrient because it doesn't provide nutrients to your body. Yes, it provides glucose, but it doesn't provide nutrition. And as an anti-nutrient, it actually therefore uses nutrition to metabolize it, to break it down, to allow your body to use it. And some of the nutrients that it throws off balance are zinc, copper, and iron. All three are key fertility nutrients that your body does need to support your fertility. So you can kind of see where the disconnect is. Another thing that I want to just stop and point out is that I'm not talking about someone necessarily who's addicted to sugar. Of course, we know people who have really strong sugar cravings and really enjoy their sweets and their treats, but this doesn't necessarily apply only to them. Because of the way that sugar is added to our foods, we are unsuspectingly exposing ourselves to so much sugar on a daily basis. And because a lot of companies know that some of us are probably trying to pitch into our sugar intake, they've gotten a little bit sneaky and they're using kind of like a loophole. On the nutrition label, companies are required to list how much sugar is added and then also list the ingredients. Because the first ingredient on a nutrition label means that it has the highest quantity, it is the biggest amount in the food. So if you are reading a label and it says that sugar is number 1, 2, or 3, you may automatically be like, oh, this has too much sugar for me. What they start to do sometimes is use 2 or 3 different types of sugar. So there's only a little bit of this type of sugar and a little bit of this type of sugar, maybe a little bit of this type of sugar, so that the quantities appear to be less as they are listed in the list of ingredients. When you add all that sugar up, it's a lot of sugar. It's too much sugar. And not all companies separate the added sugar from the total sugar up on the top of the nutrition label. So it does take a little detective work, but it can be very useful for you if you're someone who is trying to change their fertility for the better. So what do we do? How do we continue to enjoy the foods that we enjoy and still monitor our sugar? Fiber is listed under carbs as well as sugar. So that's a little caveat that you probably should be paying attention to, because you do want the fiber. But if you can start to look at the total amount of sugar, of added sugars and included sugars, you should be trying to get 24 grams max. Sugar isn't a requirement, so you don't need to max out if you don't have to. But anything above that and you're getting into dangerous territory. More and more women are presenting with pre-diabetes and certainly diabetes, and you don't want to be in either of those spectrums. If you're pre-diabetic, you're right there on the bubble and you really need to start considering how to reduce your refined carb intake and certainly your sugar intake. Time to talk about these alternatives and these sugar substitutes. Diet Coke and diet this and diet that, and even sugar-free this and sugar-free that. It has sweeteners, it just doesn't have the normal cane sugar or the high fructose corn syrup, etc. But those sugars, especially if it's aspartame, your body doesn't necessarily know always how to react to them. Because these sugar alternatives are sometimes 100 times sweeter than regular sugar, the companies can of course use less, so they love to use them, but your body doesn't necessarily love them because it doesn't know always how to react to them. Your sugar response is thrown off and your sugar expectation in the future is also thrown off because now your body is accustomed to having this sweeter thing. Researchers found that people who were using diet drinks and diet beverages to reduce their sugar for weight loss ended up having difficulty actually achieving that because their sugar cravings didn't go away and they actually increased because they were using this ultra sweet sugar alternative. So it's just important to make sure that you're not causing more damage to your metabolism and that your body's relationship to sugar doesn't shift too far. Some natural sugars that are okay that aren't harmful to you are things like stevia, monk fruit, and even some sugar alcohols because they are in a more natural state that your body can process better. But keep in mind that these sugar alternatives are still sweet. They're still sugar. Your body still can respond by spiking your blood sugar. So you still want to make sure that you are watching your intake even of these alternatives. Sticking to things like honey and maple syrup and even agave could be helpful for someone who wants to avoid using sugar alternatives but are still trying to avoid highly processed white cane sugar. Another thing that I wanted to tell you, just in case you didn't know, is that brown sugar isn't better than white sugar. I think maybe I used to think that also, so that's what I'm trying to tell you. Brown sugar is just white sugar that has been stripped of all the good stuff and highly processed, but it just has molasses added back to it. So actually, if you are in a pinch at home and you ran out of brown sugar, just pour some molasses on top of the white sugar. Although if you didn't have brown sugar, you probably won't have molasses in your cabinet. Never mind. Just be aware that some things are greenwashed and have green labeling to kind of convince us that they are better for us, but brown sugar is not better for you. It has more minerals because molasses actually does have some benefits, but again, the sugar content doesn't change. So if you watch this and you're feeling like maybe I need to assess or reassess my relationship to sugar, I definitely think that you should start. You should consider and start looking at the labels and reading how much sugar is in a given thing and making sure you're looking at the serving size too, because if it says 10 grams of sugar, but it's 3 servings and you ate the whole thing, you just had 30 grams of sugar. So keep that in mind. And just assessing and checking in with yourself to see what your relationship to sugar is. Could there be a benefit to your menstrual health, your menstrual quality, your ovulation health, certainly your egg health if you had a change in your sugar intake on a daily basis? If you want to learn a little bit more about sugar, sugar alternatives, what is the whole conversation about sugar cravings, I created a sugar packet that includes a few resources that you can look over and learn a little bit more about how to change the type of sugars that you buy or change the amount of sugar that you eat. If you are interested, I left a link to it below in the description. You can just grab the PDF and check it out. Sugar is one of the main things, if not the first thing, that I normally tackle with my clients because it is something that we can easily gain control over, and because of the ripple effect that it has on insulin and then the way that insulin goes on to affect other hormones in our body, and of course our fertility is driven by hormones, sugar is just kind of like a quick, easy target to get the ball rolling, to reset your fertility and start preparing for pregnancy. If you want in-depth support for this and a few other fertility inputs, I am available to support you, and I will be honored to welcome you into my fertility program. Depending on your needs, depending on your journey so far, I have a few program options and we can find the one that works for you. So that's it. I hope I left you with at least something to consider something to let you be a little bit more mindful about your relationship to sugar, because again, it is not about being addicted to sugar. It is about the effect that sugar can have on you, whether you are aware of it or not. And for someone who is struggling to get pregnant, someone who is struggling to stay pregnant, to have such a silent, sneaky little thing in there sabotaging your fertility, it's frustrating and annoying and heartbreaking, actually, because we aren't always aware of how best to protect ourselves and protect our fertility. And if something as simple as sugar is what is causing harm, then we can certainly begin to tackle that. Thank you for watching this video. As always, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and even hit the notification button if you want to learn more about tips and guidance on how to support your fertility in future videos. I don't want you to miss out. I will see you on the next one.